Hello, my name is Davis Barney, and this is my presentation on my virtual hurdy-gurdy that I made for my final project of computer sound simulation. So let's get started here. So these are all hurdy-gurdies. Now, one fascinating thing about the hurdy-gurdy, it's a very old instrument. First known record of it goes back all the way to the 10th century in what is now Spain, and has a long history in French and German folk music, as well as church music, although around the 12 to 1300s, it became more associated with commoners and less associated with the church. That was also around the time that organs started appearing in churches instead of these. These instruments used to be quite large and had to be played by multiple people, but around that time they were engineered to be smaller and to the form that you see today. Now, the bodies of these can vary, such as this one, which is more of a shield or lute body shape. You get some that are more like guitar bodies, some that are similar to violin bodies, such as this one, and also just boxes. They make them into box shapes too. That is quite popular. This one really looks like a guitar, and you can see the key chest in here. This is the key chest here. So the instrument is played using this crank. You would use your hand to crank this, which will bow the strings using this wheel, which you can use any kind of rosin on, usually violin rosin today, to play any number of strings. A simple hurdy-gurdy will have two strings for the melody, two drone strings. There can also be a trumpet string, which is not attached to the bridge, which can act as a drone, but when this crank is turned very forcefully, it causes that string to buzz, which can be used to create rhythms while you're playing, and for stylistic purposes. So you turn the crank on the hurdy-gurdy, it bows these strings. There can also be sympathetic strings on the outside that sort of extends the natural release of the instrument's natural envelope. But once it goes inside this key chest, that's where you can actually form the sound. So imagine if you had a guitar, you would have a fretboard with a bunch of frets, and you would use your finger to press the string against one of these frets. This is kind of like the opposite of that. You press these keys, which move these frets forcefully onto a string, which is in a fixed position, and that will change the length of that string, in turn changing the frequency that that string will vibrate at. And it does this for two strings. Everything about the hurdy-gurdy is designed to be a continuous sound, played in unison or sometimes in an octave. You generally won't have any kind of polyphony other than the relationship between the drone strings, which are not controlled by these keys, and the melody string. So the idea of it is you have a continuous monotone, sometimes octave, drone with a accompanying melody, and these were designed to accompany voice. There can be it can be accompanying organ, it can be accompanying flute, or really any instrument. But it is a very loud instrument, and it pretty much will dominate whatever it's being used in. So more than not, it's played by itself. Here's a video of somebody playing a Christmas melody, which is appropriate for this time of year. So you should be hearing this. You can hear that the keys themselves actually make a sound a clicky, clacky sound. It is quite a unique part of the sound, and definitely, and there you go, there's that trompet buzzing. You see his hands moving a little faster. He's creating a beat with his hand by buzzing that string. And it can get fast, basically accentuating every beat now. And he's getting a little crazy with it there, but you know, the pro players of the hurdy-gurdy will play quite aggressively like that. So let's move over to my simulation. So this is my max patch, and this is just the top screen. It's a little bit disorganized, but it makes sense if you look here. So the first thing that you would want to do when you load this up is choose one of these tunings. I have two tunings in here. One is a G-C tuning, and the other one is a C-G tuning, and they are selected with these buttons here. So these buttons basically cycle between these U menus, and these U menus, I have two settings in them that I have programmed to be slightly off of each other to create a more warm unison sound rather than being exactly the same. And these can be adjusted if you wanted to play in a custom tuning. You could simply add something to this menu. It would go on to input 3 here, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I've only done the two most common tunings. Now, once you start playing, it's going to go into these sub-oscillators here, which are not showing up on this capture, but it's essentially just a car plus strong. It's a car plus strong synthesis oscillator. So you got I have pink noise going in, and as opposed to white noise. I found pink noise to be a little bit less harsh sounding and more controlled for the type of string that I'm trying to emulate, as these strings do tend to have a bit of fabric on them to dampen the sound of the string, and it's not a plucked string here. We're doing a bowed string. I found pink noise to be a little bit better for that. The noise is then combined with an envelope and goes into a delay line, and the delay line is also being controlled by this frequency that's going in. It's going to control how it goes through that delay line to turn that pink noise and envelope combination into a pitched sound. And it does this for all these oscillators. Now these middle two oscillators, or rather these melodic string oscillators down here, are multiplied by 2 so that they're higher than the drone strings, and they are controlled by this MIDI in. The MIDI in strips the note on and off messages. It's being sent to a couple different places. Then it gets turned into a frequency, applied to the envelope, and then sent off to all these places here. So another over here is where the trumpet string is, and I have it tied to this mod wheel. So this mod wheel, when you play, will move, and then it will cause as you move the mod wheel, it will create a continuous sound as long as you're moving the wheel, sending pulses to all of these oscillators until you release the mod wheel. The trumpet string is different. It's only triggered when the value of this is 0. I found that to be the best position for that, as keeping it in the middle, I kept accidentally triggering it. Keeping it on the top, it was a little bit cumbersome to hit that, and as you heard in the demonstration, it's pretty important to have a correct timing with that. So I figured the bottom of the mod wheel would be the best place to have that in the way that I've implemented it. Then, after these all get mixed together through this master filter, I have this biquad sort of giving a slight boost. It's 293 hertz. It's about the same as a good sounding acoustic guitar, and I found it worked well, particularly well with the tuning that I have as default in here. And this can be adjusted. As I said, there can be many different body shapes for the hurdy-gurdy, and rather than just choose one, you can change the resonance to fit whatever you're trying to emulate. Then it goes into a volume envelope for one final time. It goes into some reverbs. I have a Schroeder reverb, very basic Schroeder reverb, pretty much exactly as it's described in the Trumpet String paper. But the difference here is I have this verb level, which is controlling it's controlling the time of delay of the original delays in the Schroeder reverb. And as you turn it down, the delay will get faster, and it will be more of a shorter reverb, and at higher levels it gets into a long reverb that you're used to hearing. I tend to like it at 100, but there could be instances where you want this to be a little more dry. You might want to turn it down a bit. It's not perfect, but it does work. Then there's a dry wet knob. 100% wet is you're only hearing the reverb. 100% dry, you're not hearing it at all. It's probably better to keep it around 40 to 50%. The reverb definitely makes it sound a lot more natural. It also it's a stereo reverb, so you will hear some stereo spatialization of the audio that you're playing, as well as kind of imitating a stereo mic placement technique, as well as the sympathetic strings will tend to carry the sound a bit longer than a typical Trumpet String algorithm would allow. So now that I've demonstrated it, let me turn my webcam on. So here's the synthesizer I have. It's an Ovation Bass Station 2 connected with USB. You should be able to use any MIDI controller for this, but results may vary. If you have trouble with it getting it to work with your mod wheel, then I'm sure there's settings in Max to change the input to a knob or to another source. But definitely, this isn't an instrument that is played with keys. It's an instrument played with a wheel and keys. So you need to have two input sources to play this properly. So let me go ahead and start playing it for you. If I don't play anything, if I just hit a key, there's a little burst of noise, basically using the same kind of Trumpet algorithm, but not going through a delay line. It's just a burst of noise with an envelope on it, and that's supposed to imitate the clackiness of the keys as they are pressed, which I said again is an important sound to emulate. When you bow this, right there. So to engage the trumpet string, as I said before, you turn the mod wheel all the way down. So little bit tricky to get the handling down. I'm not a trained hurdy-gurdyist, but with some practice, this could emulate most of the features of a hurdy-gurdy. This drone here is not connected, and that is optional. I found with that drone on, it sounded a bit too full, almost like an orchestra. Again, all these are kind of coming in at max volume here, so it's a little bit difficult to avoid it sounding like a entire orchestra. I have 2 drone oscillators at a low frequency, 1 drone oscillator at a high frequency, and then the 2 melodic oscillators, and that's pretty much it. So this was a much needed overhaul to my original design, which only did about half of this. I've added some great new features to it. This can be turned into a Max for Live patch. I did start the process of converting it to be a Ableton Live instrument. However, the methods for which Ableton Live utilizes Max, it didn't work just by importing it straight in. I ended up having to rebuild everything by hand, and it can definitely be done. If this is an instrument that people want to use in an Ableton Live set, it can definitely be done. There's nothing here that wouldn't work implemented into Ableton. But yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you for watching, and have a good holiday.